The crowd's roar was deafening as Muhammad Ali stepped out of his sleek black Cadillac. It was April 1974, just months after his legendary victory over Joe Frazier, and Ali had arrived in Philadelphia for a charity event. His presence alone electrified the air. Men in pressed suits and women in elegant dresses jostled for position, desperate for just a glimpse of the champion. Cameras flashed like lightning strikes, capturing every movement of the man who called himself the greatest. But amid the chaos and adulation, something caught Ali's eye, something the cameras missed. A small boy, no more than 7 years old, stood at the edge of the crowd. Unlike the well-dressed spectators, he wore faded overalls with patches at the knees and a thin jacket that seemed inadequate against the spring chill. His shoes were worn through at the toes, and his face bore the hollow look of someone who had missed too many meals. What struck Ali wasn't just the boy's poverty, it was his eyes. While everyone else stared at Ali with awe or excitement, this child's gaze was fixed on something else entirely. Following the boy's line of sight, Ali noticed a frail, elderly man sitting on a nearby bench, clutching a worn hat in trembling hands. The man's clothes were as threadbare as the boy's, his eyes downcast, seemingly invisible to the crowd focused only on celebrity. Ali paused. His handlers urged him forward toward the waiting dignitaries, but something about that boy held him back. With a gesture that silenced his entourage, Ali changed course and walked directly toward the child. The crowd parted in confusion as Ali, in his immaculately tailored suit, knelt down before the boy in patched overalls. The cameras swiveled frantically. What was the champ doing? "What's your name, little man?" Ali asked, his voice softer than the thunderous proclamations the world was accustomed to hearing. The boy's eyes widened. "Tommy," he whispered, his voice nearly lost in the murmuring crowd. "Well, Tommy," Ali said, "seems like you're the only one here not looking at me. What's so interesting over there?" Tommy hesitated, then pointed toward the elderly man. "That's Mr. Jenkins. He lost his job at the factory last month. My mama gives him food sometimes, but the men from the bank came yesterday. They were real mad." Ali nodded slowly, taking in the information and the genuine concern in the boy's voice. Tommy leaned forward then, cupping his small hand around his mouth as if to share a secret with the heavyweight champion of the world. The words he whispered were so unexpected that Ali later claimed they hit him harder than any punch he'd ever taken in the ring. "Please don't hit him," Tommy whispered, his voice trembling. "Everybody says you're the strongest man in the world. If you hit Mr. Jenkins, he might break." For a moment, Muhammad Ali, the man known for his quick wit and quicker fists, was speechless. Then something remarkable happened. Those who were close enough would later describe seeing tears form in the champion's eyes. Without a word, Ali stood and walked over to Mr. Jenkins. The elderly man looked up, confusion and a flicker of fear crossing his weathered face as the imposing figure of the boxing champion approached him. What happened next would be captured by a single photographer and would appear on front pages across America the following day. If this story has made you feel something already, however small, don't leave without giving back. Comment and tell me where you're watching this video from, and subscribe to the channel. The crowd fell silent as Muhammad Ali sat down beside Mr. Jenkins on that weathered park bench. The distance between the world's greatest boxer and the forgotten elderly man seemed to represent worlds colliding. Fame meeting obscurity, wealth facing poverty. "And sir," Ali began, his voice carrying clearly in the sudden hush, "that young man over there seems to think very highly of you." Mr. Jenkins glanced toward Tommy, confusion evident on his face. "The Wilson boy. He's a good kid. His mama brings me soup sometimes." His voice was rough, like sandpaper on wood, the voice of a man who'd worked hard his entire life. "Well, any man who earns that kind of respect from a child must be someone worth knowing," Ali said, extending his hand. "I'm Muhammad Ali." A faint smile crossed Mr. Jenkins' face. "I know who you are, Mr. Ali. Everyone knows who you are." "And now I know who you are," Ali replied. "And I'd like to hear your story, if you're willing to share it." What followed was a conversation that lasted nearly an hour, while dignitaries waited and photographers captured frame after frame of the unusual scene. The champion and the destitute man, deep in conversation on a public bench, as if they were old friends catching up. Mr. Jenkins spoke haltingly at first, then with increasing confidence. He told Ali about his 43 years working at the textile factory before it closed down, about his wife who had passed away 2 years earlier, about the mounting medical bills that had consumed his savings, and about the foreclosure notice that had arrived the previous week. "I fought in Korea," Mr. Jenkins said, his back straightening slightly with the memory, "came home with a purple heart and thought I'd done my fighting. Never imagined I'd end up battling the bank at 72. Ali listened intently, occasionally nodding or asking questions. Those close enough to hear would later report that not once did he interrupt or try to offer quick solutions. He simply listened with the same focus he brought to studying an opponent in the ring. When Mr. Jenkins finished speaking, Ali placed a hand on the older man's shoulder. "You know, they call me the greatest," he said, his voice carrying enough to be heard by those nearby. "But greatness isn't about how many punches you throw. It's about how many battles you fight for what matters. By that measure, sir, you might be greater than me." Then Ali did something that shocked the waiting officials and would generate headlines across the country. He stood up, helped Mr. Jenkins to his feet, and announced in a voice meant to be heard by everyone, "This man has fought for his country and worked honest days for over 40 years. Now he's fighting to keep his home. Well, today he gets Muhammad Ali in his corner, and anybody who knows boxing knows what that means." Turning to his business manager, who stood nearby with a look of bewilderment, Ali said, "Get Mr. Jenkins information. I want those bank problems handled by tomorrow." The crowd erupted in cheers, but Ali wasn't finished. He beckoned Tommy over, placing one hand on the boy's shoulder and the other on Mr. Jenkins. "And we're going to do more than that," Ali announced. "I'm making a promise right here, in front of all these witnesses. We're going to create a program for folks like Mr. Jenkins, people who've worked hard their whole lives and deserve better than being thrown away when times get tough." The impromptu press conference that followed captured the imagination of the nation. Ali spoke with passion about what he called the Respect Program, an initiative to help elderly people facing financial crisis. "I can throw punches that knock men down," Ali told the reporters who had gathered, microphones thrust forward eagerly. "But today, this young man," he gestured toward Tommy, "taught me that real strength is about helping people stand up." As the day ended and Ali prepared to leave, Tommy approached him once more, his young face serious. "You really didn't hit him," the boy said, wonder in his voice. Ali smiled and knelt down again to meet the child at eye level. "No, Tommy, I didn't. And you know what? You taught the greatest a lesson today. Sometimes the strongest thing you can do with your hands isn't to make a fist, it's to reach out." As Ali's car pulled away, no one realized that this chance encounter would change not just the lives of Mr. Jenkins and Tommy, but would reshape Muhammad Ali's legacy in ways no one could have predicted. 3 months passed. Summer heat had settled over Philadelphia like a heavy blanket when a sleek black car once again pulled up to the same neighborhood. This time, there were no crowds, no reporters, just Muhammad Ali and a small entourage exiting the vehicle and walking purposefully toward a modest community center. Inside, 30 elderly residents sat in a semicircle of folding chairs. Some leaned on canes, others on walkers. All of them looked up in astonishment as the heavyweight champion of the world strode into their meeting. "Mr. Ali," exclaimed a familiar voice. "Mr. Jenkins rose from his chair, steadier and healthier looking than he had been during their first encounter. Ali embraced the older man warmly. "I told you I'd be back to check on things, didn't I? Muhammad Ali keeps his promises. What had happened in the intervening months was nothing short of remarkable. True to his word, Ali had personally intervened in Mr. Jenkins' foreclosure situation, not simply by paying off the debt, though he had done that, but by creating a legitimate path forward. Working with financial advisors and community organizations, Ali had established what newspapers were now calling the Respect Initiative. The program identified elderly individuals facing financial crises and provided not just immediate relief, but sustainable solutions, debt restructuring, employment opportunities for those able to work, and community support systems for those who couldn't. The community center where they now gathered had been transformed into the program's headquarters, staffed by social workers, financial counselors, and, most notably, local youth volunteers who earned educational scholarships through their service. Among those volunteers was Tommy Wilson, who now wore a crisp blue shirt with Respect Initiative embroidered on the pocket. The boy beamed as Ali ruffled his hair affectionately. "Our champion right here," Ali said, his voice carrying through the room. "The real fighter who started all this." For the next 2 hours, Ali sat among the elderly participants, listening to their stories, their challenges, and their progress. He took notes, asked questions, and occasionally erupted into his famous boisterous laughter at their jokes and observations. What struck observers was the absence of cameras or publicity. This wasn't a photo opportunity or a publicity stunt. This was Muhammad Ali, arguably the most famous athlete on the planet, sitting in metal folding chairs in a sweltering community center, giving his complete attention to people society had largely forgotten. During a break, Ali stepped outside for some air and found Tommy following him. "Mr. Ali," the boy said hesitantly, "can I ask you something?" "Anything, little man. Why are you doing all this? You don't even know these people." Ali looked thoughtful for a moment, then pointed to a nearby tree. "See that tree, Tommy? It's got deep roots we can't see. Those roots connect to other trees, to the soil, to everything around it. People are like that too. We've all got invisible connections. When you whispered to me about Mr. Jenkins that day, you reminded me of something important, that we're all connected, whether we can see it or not." He knelt down to Tommy's level, his voice growing serious. "In the ring, I fight one man at a time. It's simple. But out here, the real fight is much bigger. It's against indifference, against the idea that some people matter less than others. That's a fight that needs more than just my fists." What Ali didn't mention, but what would become clear in the weeks that followed, was how much this work was changing his own perspective. The man known for proclaiming, "I am the greatest," was discovering a different kind of greatness in the quiet dignity of the elderly people he was helping. As summer turned to fall, the Respect Initiative expanded. What had begun as a localized effort in Philadelphia spread to Chicago, then Louisville, then New York. Ali leveraged his celebrity and connections to secure funding, support, and attention for the cause. But more significant than the program's growth was its impact on Ali himself. Reporters who had known him for years noted a subtle shift in his public persona. The bombastic proclamations that had defined his early career were still there, but alongside them emerged a more reflective voice, one that spoke with increasing eloquence about social responsibility and compassion. In October of 1974, during an interview before his legendary Rumble in the Jungle fight with George Foreman, Ali surprised journalists by spending more time discussing the Respect Initiative than the upcoming bout. "When people ask why I'm confident I'll beat Foreman," Ali told the assembled press, "it's because I'm fighting for something bigger than a belt now. When you step into that ring knowing there are people counting on you, not just for entertainment, but for their dignity, for their very lives, that gives you a power no opponent can match." George Foreman, listening from the back of the room, reportedly whispered to his trainer, "I think we might be in trouble." History would prove him right. Ali's victory in Zaire would become the stuff of boxing legend. But behind that public triumph was a private transformation that had begun with a child's whispered plea, "Don't hit him." December 25th, 1979, 5 years after that fateful encounter in Philadelphia. Christmas morning dawned clear and cold over Louisville, Kentucky, Muhammad Ali's hometown. At the Ali family home, holiday celebrations were in full swing when a staff member informed the champion he had visitors. Ali stepped onto his front porch to find an unexpected sight. Tommy Wilson, no longer a small boy but a teenager on the cusp of manhood, standing beside an elderly Mr. Jenkins. "Merry Christmas, champ," Tommy said, his voice deeper but carrying the same earnestness Ali remembered. "Well, look at you two," Ali exclaimed, embracing them both, the dynamic duo. Come in out of the cold." Over hot chocolate in Ali's kitchen, far from the cameras and crowds, Tommy and Mr. Jenkins shared their news. Tommy had received a full scholarship to attend college the following fall, the first in his family to have such an opportunity. Mr. Jenkins, now 77, served as the elder statesman of the Philadelphia Respect Initiative, mentoring younger seniors on financial literacy and community advocacy. "None of this would have happened without you, Mr. Ali," Tommy said, his eyes bright with emotion. Ali shook his head. "No, young man. None of this would have happened without you. I was just walking into another event, another day of being celebrated. You were the one who saw someone invisible to the rest of us. You were the one brave enough to speak up." Mr. Jenkins nodded in agreement. "He's right, Tommy. I was sitting on that bench that day, feeling like my life was over, like I didn't matter anymore. Then this little boy," he squeezed Tommy's shoulder affectionately, "kept stopping by, bringing me sandwiches, talking to me when no one else would. You saw me when I was invisible, son." What Ali revealed to them then had never been made public. The Respect Initiative, which had by 1979 grown into a national program helping thousands of elderly Americans maintain their dignity and financial independence, had been structured with a unique feature. 25% of all donations and proceeds went into a special education fund for underprivileged youth who demonstrated exceptional compassion and community service. The Tommy Wilson Scholarship, Ali explained, had already sent 17 young people to college, because what you taught me that day wasn't just about respecting our elders, Ali told the astonished teenager. It was about recognizing that real character isn't measured by wealth or fame or power. It's measured by how we treat those who need us. As the three sat in Ali's kitchen, their conversation turned to the future. Tommy spoke of his plans to study social work and public policy. Mr. Jenkins described the advocacy group of seniors he had organized to address housing policy in Philadelphia. Ali listened intently, occasionally interjecting with questions or suggestions. But mostly, the man known for his verbal sparring and poetic boasts was content to sit quietly, witnessing the ripple effects of that moment 5 years earlier when a child had whispered, "Don't hit him." Later that evening, after his guests had departed, Ali stood alone in his study, looking at a framed photograph on the wall. It was the image captured by that single photographer on the day he'd met Tommy and Mr. Jenkins, Ali sitting on the bench beside the elderly man, their profiles silhouetted against the afternoon sun. Below the photograph was a simple inscription: "The measure of a man is not how many times he knocks others down, but how many times he helps others up." As 1979 drew to a close, Muhammad Ali stood at a crossroads in his remarkable life. His boxing career would continue for a few more years, with triumphs and defeats still ahead. But something fundamental had shifted in how he viewed his purpose and legacy. In the decades that followed, as Ali's boxing prowess faded and the effects of Parkinson's disease began to take their toll, the Respect Initiative continued to grow. By the time of Ali's death in 2016, the program had helped over 100,000 elderly Americans maintain their independence and dignity, while the Tommy Wilson Scholarship had sent more than 5,000 underprivileged youth to college. Tommy Wilson himself would go on to serve as the executive director of the Ali Foundation, overseeing its humanitarian work worldwide. Mr. Jenkins lived to the remarkable age of 93, remaining active in community advocacy until his final days. In his last major interview, conducted when his speech had been reduced to barely a whisper by Parkinson's, Ali was asked about his greatest achievement. The reporter expected him to mention the rumble in the jungle or the thriller in Manila, or perhaps his stance against the Vietnam War. Instead, Ali pointed to a different photograph on his wall, a recent one showing an elderly Tommy Wilson surrounded by the latest recipients of the scholarship that bore his name. "That," Ali managed to say, his voice faint, but his eyes still bright with the fire that had made him a champion. "That is the real victory." The story of Muhammad Ali, Tommy Wilson, and Mr. Jenkins reminds us that true greatness often happens away from the spotlight, in moments of simple human connection. It reminds us that the mightiest among us are measured not by their strength, but by their compassion. In a world that celebrates power, it teaches us that sometimes the most powerful act is to listen to a child's whisper. If you made it this far and felt every word, don't leave without subscribing. I tell these stories with my heart in hand, to reach people like you, who feel, who get emotional, who truly live. If this touched you deeply, give back, comment, subscribe. Come be part of this family with me until the next video.